So yeah, I think I'm supposed to press that way, right? So politics and the ethics of hacking. This is a really interesting subject for me to talk about for reasons you'll learn soon. So first off, little disclaimer, because this is a charged topic, especially when you say politics, people get a little like shaky, like me, for reasons, especially not because I voted for someone in particular. Yeah, so real quick, this might make you, some of this stuff might like make you really pissed off at everything, or maybe it'll make you really happy and think about stuff, and talk about it, or yell at me. Please don't. You might get sick. I don't know. It's not. Oh, it takes a second. I forgot. Sorry. Wow, it really does take a moment. It'll get there. Yeah, there we go. Yelling. Nausea. Like I'm nauseous because this is taking so long. Maybe you'll see something you shouldn't, like the slides too late. Or maybe you'll be like, oh, great job. Or maybe you will not, and you will hit me in the face. Don't hit me in the face. So hold on. It'll there we go. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So one thing to kind of note, I think we should define like what hacking is, right? And it is there's a classic quote that hacking is the clever circumvention of imposed limits. And of course that can apply to like almost anything, right? Wow, the laptop's updating later than the rest of it. That's fine. I'll look up here. This is St. Jude Milhon. She was a famous hacker. Also, she was female. Whoa, what? Incidentally, that's actually her mugshot from her participation in the march from Selma to Montgomery in 1965. So she was already like doing, stuff that pissed people off, which is awesome. So quickly about me. I know they kind of mentioned some stuff, so I'll kind of breeze through this real fast. I'm principal research consultant at a company called Atredis Partners. I'm also the purveyor of memes, dank and spicy. There, we hack stuff. People pay us to do it to make sure that no one else can do it. I have a rich background in stuff that Andrew Dooley already mentioned. Used to be involved in a group called Build It Securely. It's defunct now, but it was one of the first ones focused on Internet of Things security. And, that shameless plug was, of course, the Android Hacker's Handbook thing. So first, the politics side of things. I put quotes for a reason, but I know this is going to be like really, really surprising for people, but... you might not know this, but intelligence agencies and governments actually hack each other. I know, it's a shock, right? So, I don't know if anyone's heard of any of these. Please raise your hand. I can't see you because I have to look up like 3 different screens at any given time. But you might recognize some of these, especially if you work in any way, shape, or form in computer security or tangentially to it. There we go. NSA TAO. Anyone know what that is? Okay, got a couple. Hacking team. It's a stupid name. It's like hacking team. Well, I wonder what they do. Gamma group. That's probably these are espionage type companies that you probably have never heard of. I mean, except the NSA. They're not a company. Equation Group. Shadow brokers. Anyone? No? Okay. Okay, got one. Vault 7. If you follow WikiLeaks, you've probably heard of this. Well, if you haven't, you should look because it's really interesting. And then, of course, this guy. I mean, I'm sure you've all heard of him. They made a movie about him, or something. I didn't watch it. So as for something like the shadow brokers, so last year, almost a year ago, this group just popped up and started auctioning off tools that were supposedly being used by the NSA for hacking, right? Oh man, this thing is crazy. No one paid them, so their auction failed, and they ended up releasing everything that they had collected, probably from breaching the NSA or someone had leaked it. It was totally not anyone in Russia. It was. This thing's slow. Okay, hold on. Sorry. Need a better clicker. It's slow. Okay, well, it's just advancing on its own now. Anyway, so yeah, that was cool. They released everything that the NSA had, or that they had gotten from the NSA, and it included stuff like targeting financial systems and a variety of different types of network devices and operating systems and things like that. So it was pretty clear, if the NSA wanted to, I don't know, disrupt a terrorist cell's financial stuff or a country they don't like, that would probably write exploits to be able to do that. Okay, so FBI versus Tor. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Tor. It's a privacy-preserving network, anonymity network. You can use it if you are a political activist or a reporter or anything that you wanted to kind of mask your identity when you're accessing something that might be questionable, or if you're a whistleblower or something of that nature. Now, you can also use it for things like child porn. Why is it advancing? Are you advancing it? Oh. Okay. Yeah. So the FBI exploited a vulnerability in the Tor browser bundle based on Firefox. And since the Tor browser bundle connects over Tor, you just have a browser that's always anonymized, right? And what they did was they compromised this particular child porn rings site that was only accessible via Tor, hosted this browser exploit there so that anytime one of these nasty people visited it, it would compromise their system, and then it would be able to expose their actual identity or expose their location, things of that nature. Which is great, right? Because I think we can universally agree that child porn is terrible, and you shouldn't do it. Okay, so that's cool. Now, last year, I don't know why is it not showing? Okay. Anyway. Last year there was a remarkably similar exploit that came out and started being used in the wild. There's not really any clarity on who it was targeting, but it was very similar to the one that was used in this particular case. What's interesting is that because surrounding this particular exploit, there have been 8,000 computers across a swath of countries that have been compromised by this, but only 900 arrests related to this investigation. So what do you think they're using that for? I don't know, maybe to target people like political activists and reporters and whistleblowers. So that's really, that's just some food for thought, if you will. So a question for you. Do you, and I'm sure this is going to be one of those we're not going to agree, kind of. Is it wrong that governments and intelligence agencies have this capability, knowing that they can use them to combat crime, combat terrorism, or whatever they perceive as terrorism, if that's something like Occupy, for example? Yes, no. Is it wrong? Hands in the air if you think this is totally wrong. It's okay. Okay, a few of them. Right, but at the same time, it's something that's valuable, but can also be turned against citizens, right? And that's shitty. So it's really not there's no clear answer to me. So So there is this thing called the Wassenaar Arrangement. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but this was actually used, created in 1996, basically to get a handle on weapons sales. Let's just kind of cut to the chase, so that all these countries could say, okay, we promise not to sell more nukes to, you know, North Korea or something. And if we do, we'll let you know. But it was amended in 2013 to cover, let's just call them cyber weapons, if you will, right? And now the thing with that is that these very same tools that they're covering in the amendment, it's very broad. It's not well defined. It's caused a lot of controversy. These are the same tools that people like me use. I mean, not the ones, you know, that the NSA uses. Most of those have been leaked anyway. These very same tools are things we use to test our customers' networks, and that you know, internal security teams that corporations use to test to make sure they're not vulnerable to, you know, X, Y, and Z. And just for statistics, this is the number of countries that are involved. So it's a pretty large membership here. So because I'd be remiss not to mention this, since this is such a hot button topic, and I've actually heard a few people, both attendees and other speakers, talk about it. So that's a Sequoia voting machine, totally hacked it. Now the thing is that everyone talks about how Russia or some foreign power hacked the election. Okay, now people then associate that with voting machine tampering and stuff like that. So they didn't hack the election in the electronic sense, like they had someone like sitting with a laptop and a hoodie next to a voting machine going like, oh, and you know, all the votes are tampered with. Yes, of course, there were things like recounts that were canceled and stuff like that, but they were, however, likely instrumental in things like, oh, I don't know, compromising email servers and then leaking the emails from those that helped public opinion get swayed. This is also called psychological operations, for anyone who's not familiar. Actually being able to, you know, influence media and whatnot. Now, so there hasn't been any public evidence of voting machine tampering to date. It's not out of the realm of possibility that someone could ostensibly tamper with a machine. I wish I had the video, but you know, my previous team at a different company actually did this, and so have other people. It's not difficult, but the one caveat is that it actually generally requires physical access, which would then require something like colluding, polling place workers colluding together. Not that a well-funded nation state couldn't pay them off to be able to do that, but just, you know, for reference, like that is actually, there are a few hoops to jump through from the process standpoint. So the ethical side. Now, there are a couple companies. This is sort of like a dovetail out of the politics side. FlexiSpy and Retina-X. Has anyone ever heard of them? Maybe like a couple people just were like, I don't know, I used their software once. So what they do is they made stalkerware, if that's just call it for what it is. It's basically consumer surveillance. They got breached by this group called, so they allow you to spy on your spouse. They allow you to spy on your employees, things like that, by installing a mobile app, by installing some software on a desktop, or what have you. So another hacker's reference, which is really clever, like Hackers of the movie, Leopard Boy and the Decepticons, some group, actually breached FlexiSpy and Retina-X's networks. And they were able to get all sorts of just wonderful treasure trove of things, including things like customer email addresses. They were actually able to get, and they released some of the data that had been collected by these companies, you know, like where their software was deployed. So that could be anything from text messages, emails, any number of things. And actually they also got credit card information. Now, Leopard Boy, I assume he's the leader, right? He said, I'm going to burn them to the ground and leave absolutely nowhere for any of them to hide, intimating that he's going to do this again, or his group is going to do this again to any of these other stalkerware peddlers, if you will. That's just a list you can actually go to Vice, a motherboard, and look at some of the articles about this. There's a whole list of like all the stuff that they dropped. Yeah, so I guess then the question would be, I'm sure we can all agree again that like stalkerware is bullshit. Like that's stupid. And people are assholes if they use it. Like let's just all say that that's the case. Unless you're an employer who's using it, then great. But they did. I mean, technically they committed a crime, right? Like they broke into these companies' networks. They stole all their shit. They put it out on the internet. Was that ethical? I mean, we know that these companies are terrible, and maybe they should be burned to the ground. I'm not going to do it, but you know, was that an ethical thing for them to do? You know, they exposed something that was terrible. Was that really like, was that okay? Yes, no, anyone? Fair enough. Thank you. I like that's like an achievement. I got him to like talk to me. So to dovetail into kind of the next ethical piece, let's say you find a defect in a door lock. Like let's say it's something that you have at home or you know, you just came across it for some reason and decided to be curious. And let's say maybe it's something also your neighbor has. Like they also, you know, you get beers with each other and, hey, you got the same lock that I do. That one's a piece of shit. But somehow you're able to like, you know, wiggle it in such a way or shimmy it in such a way. And this is actually not the first time. This is actually kind of a real scenario. But anyone could open the door without a key. They just unlock it, just pop the lock by just kind of going. So what would you do in a case like this? Obviously, you'd buy a different fucking lock. I mean, but would you tell your neighbor? Would you be like, hey, you know, I could break into your house and you'd never know? Would you tell the manufacturer of this lock? You think they'd be really happy about that? You think they'd be like, yeah, we'll fix that and get you a new lock right away for free? Would you tell the public? Would you just be like, hey, anyone with this piece of shit lock, you have a problem. Like, you should immediately, like, get rid of this lock? Or would you just tell everyone? Would you go down the route of telling the manufacturer, telling your neighbor, just so they have a heads up, then maybe telling the public? If anyone's familiar with what comes next, well, not that part, but it's Mark Wahlberg looking confused because he always looks, what? What's going on? What? Huh? Where am I? So this kind of dovetails into one more ethical sort of area, which is vulnerability disclosure. A too long didn't read is basically that people like me, security researchers, hackers, people like me, find flaws in things. That's what we do. Sometimes we get paid to do it, and it's really cool. Sometimes we report them to the affected parties and try to help do the right thing, if you will. Or maybe not. You know, sometimes we don't. Sometimes vendors are assholes and we just keep our flaws to ourselves. So how do you think that, like, if we report some of this stuff, they're just going to be like, they're always going to be super supportive. They're never going to try to sue you. They just love you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for reporting this. They don't. They're not always good with it. So in conclusion, I know this is like a really, like, what the fuck just happened up on stage sort of thing. It's a really blurred line. Like, this is, you know, in the grand scheme of things, technology and security around it, and it's nascent. It's still something we're trying to figure out. I mean, the question is, how do you define things like ethical and responsible when it comes to computer security and hacking and politics around that, as well as things like if you find in your daily life something that's wrong that could affect other people, you know, like the lock example, like what do you do in that case? I mean, even government defense, law enforcement, intelligence agencies, even the people like me who are doing this sort of shit day to day, are still trying to figure it out. We're still figuring out like why the Wassenaar Arrangement is a giant flaming turd. But it's okay. I mean, it's not okay. Like, it's not okay. It's really fucking frustrating. But at the same time, we've made a lot of progress. We've taken a few steps back, but ultimately we're kind of going forward. And it's, you know, we're not lost completely yet. This idea of responsible, I really hate that word because it means that anything you don't do is irresponsible, but that's fine. We'll just call it for what it is. Disclosure of flaws in systems and computers and networks. This is not just where that lies. It lies in things like physical security and, you know, social issues, the things that you build. If you're building something that like fucking hurts people, like, you're an asshole. Maybe think about that. I mean, it applies to more than just computer hacking. One other thing for anyone who's interested in the idea of computer security, there's this thing like bug bounties, which is you get incentivized to responsibly report things, be that, you know, recognition or money. They actually give out money. It's great. And finally, like, there are active discussions about this, how to actually balance security with preserving freedom and privacy. I mean, unless, you know, you're the NSA or the FBI, but that's fine. They're nice guys. So I'm like 5 seconds left. So real quick, I guess just thank you for listening to me ramble for a while. Yeah. So cool. Thanks.